Okay, welcome back to the show, and now it is time for another exciting game of Beat the Bill. Now, all you have to do is send in any wrestling-related trivia question. If I get it wrong, you win a prize. Now, last week, I did answer a question, I did look it up, and I was right. Butch Reed was the first man ever eliminated from the Royal Rumble. So, gotta try a little bit harder, I think, if you're gonna outsmart me, because the first person who does beat the bill is going to win this copy of Andre the Giant on videotape. Go back to last week's episode for my description of this. So, this week's contestant is, as soon as I can find his message, like I said, I do not look at the questions prior to the show. It is from Jared Bond, and his question is, at WrestleMania 17, who won the gimmick Battle Royal? Well, that was a very interesting match, but it was YouTube's favorite wrestler, the Iron Sheik, who won the gimmick Battle Royal at WrestleMania 17. Now, before I get to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, if you want to send me your own questions for Beat the Bill, or you have any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, suggestions, whatever, send your emails to this address. If you can see it, WrestlingMan85@yahoo.com. Remember, if you have any questions, thoughts, comments, or if you want to send in Beat the Bill questions, send them to WrestlingMan85@yahoo.com. I will read your messages. Now then, this past week, I got the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and they came out with the results of their balloting, or their voting, from the Wrestling Observer newsletter Hall of Fame. 2 people got in this year. Those 2 people were, from Mexico, promoter Francisco Paco Alonso, who is the current promoter of CMLL, and he was the only one from the ballot that got in, and the other person that got in was picked because he was overlooked for his achievements, was Martin Cartagena from Argentina. Congratulations are in order for them. Now, there are a couple people. Now, there's a weird. It's not weird, but there's a way of voting. If you get less than 10% of your votes, you're off the ballot for at least 2 years. So with that in mind, the following people are off the Wrestling Observer newsletter ballot for the next 2 years. Faith Finlay, Hector Garza, and Jun Akiyama. Those 3 are off the ballot for the next 2 years. Now, added to their ballot next year, and this is going to be pretty interesting, I think, Edge and Dr. Wagner Jr. Now, Dr. Wagner Sr. is on the ballot, and he actually missed getting in by 15 votes. For Mexico, it's weird, because in Mexico, you need 74 votes to get in. Dr. Wagner Sr. had 59, so he missed by 15 votes. Now, another interesting note as I go along here were the top 10 vote getters in different groups. Now, the votes were casted by active wrestlers, former wrestlers, reporters, and historians. Now, here are the top 10 vote getters in the active wrestlers category. And I'm going to read them in order from 1 to 10. The Midnight Express, Paco Alonso, Masa Saito, The Fabulous Moolah, The Assassins, Conan, Carlos Colon, Roy Shire, Jesse Ventura, and Kurt Hennig. The former wrestlers, here are their top 10. Dick Murdoch, Red Bastian, Wilbur Snyder, Seiji Sakaguchi, Jimmy Snuka, Jesse Ventura, The Fabulous Moolah, Bill Miller, Gary Hart, and Mr. Wrestling Tim Woods. As far as reporters go, 1 through 10, Rey Mysterio, Paco Alonso, Conan, Volk Han, Jesse Ventura, The Midnight Express, Dr. Wagner Sr., Roy Shire, Kiyoshi Tamura, and Dr. Alfonso Morales. And as far as historians go, Bill Miller, Paco Alonso, Kiyoshi Tamura, Villano 3, Dr. Alfonso Morales, Blue Panther, Don Owen, Hans Schmidt, Roy Shire, and tied for 10th, Enrique Torres and the Assassins. Now, one big issue from this year's voting was, should Chris Benoit stay in the Hall of Fame? Now, I was reading this and it was very interesting because for a person to be out of the Hall of Fame, they needed 60% of the votes. 128 people voted for no for Benoit to stay in the Hall of Fame. That's 53.6%. That is not enough for Chris Benoit to be kicked off the Hall of Fame. However, there were some very interesting comments, and I'm going to read a couple of. I'm going to read you the first 3 or 4, and here they are. Regarding Benoit, Halls of Fame exist to denote individuals or groups who have made substantively positive contributions to the histories of their respective areas of coverage. The Observer's Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame is no different. Voters are encouraged to consider drawing power, historical significance, and in-ring work because those criteria tell us what positive contributions the nominees have made. Who in our lifetimes has done more to damage the pro wrestling industry than Chris Benoit? From threats of government interference to the most negative media coverage of wrestling in history to the immediate business dip that occurred after his crimes came to light. Benoit's murder-suicide weekend wreaked havoc on pro wrestling. Benoit should be out not just for the heinous acts that marked the end of his life, but because of the harm he did to the business overall. That harm was far more than negative enough to erase whatever positive value every 5-star match of Benoit's career collectively conferred onto the wrestling industry. Are there bad people in halls of fame, wrestling and otherwise? You bet. Has any other member of the Observer Hall of Fame damaged pro wrestling as much as Benoit did? No. Here's another one. As far as keeping him in, yes, I believe he was one of the best in-ring performers of his time. I don't believe one tragic weekend take away from his in-ring legacy. He's already had his life and soul taken away from him. There's nothing more to take. Here's another comment. True enough, Benoit committed a heinous double murder. Nothing changes that. I say yes to the Hall of Fame because Benoit was a great talent in his field. Nothing changes that. Now this last one that I'm going to read, I think is the most powerful one. I vote to recall him, not a knee-jerk call. I've dwelled upon it a lot. I'm one who can usually go with the separate the artist from the person argument. But I also believe there are boundaries, and I realize those boundaries are subjective. I can appreciate what a great actor Wallace Berry was, cringing a bit knowing what a scumbag he was as a person. On the other hand, I can't get past what a racist and misogynist douchebag W.D. Griffith was, even taking into consideration the culture of his era, and therefore cannot hold his cinematic contributions in high esteem. I can't get past Benoit's murder-suicide, especially since there could be the argument made that grim aspects of the wrestling industry that his legacy was built upon may have contributed to his actions. I'm troubled that there might be lots of people who are more concerned that persevering Benoit's wrestling legacy is more important than learning from his personal legacy. So that leads into the question of the week for this week. If you were a member of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame, would you have voted to keep Benoit in their Hall of Fame? Yes or no? I would like to read your replies next week. That's going to do it for me this week. So until next week, hopefully, this is Billy Ann Covey saying so long from the Old Line Station.